Silence is louder than words. And I know that sounds like something you've heard before, something that gets repeated so often it starts to lose its meaning. But I want you to actually sit with it for a moment. Because what I'm about to explain is not just a motivational idea. It is a precise psychological reality about what happens inside a woman's mind when you stop chasing, stop texting, stop making yourself available, and simply go quiet. And once you understand the full sequence of what actually happens, you will never again feel the urge to beg for attention. You will never again send the text you shouldn't send, because you will understand that your silence is not a passive act of waiting. It is one of the most powerful things you can do, and it does more work for you than any words ever could. Let me walk you through exactly what happens, not in a vague theoretical way, but step by step in the order it actually unfolds inside her mind. Because this is a process. It has stages, and understanding the stages is what allows you to stay grounded through all of them, without breaking, without folding, without undoing everything your silence was building. The first thing that happens when you go quiet is not what most men expect. It is not that she immediately misses you or starts wondering what went wrong. The very first thing that gets shaken is not her heart. It is her ego. And this matters enormously because it explains why her initial reaction to your silence is almost never what you want it to be. Women, particularly attractive women, live in an environment where attention is constant background noise. Messages, reactions, compliments, stares, people vying for their notice from every direction. After a while, that attention stops registering as something meaningful. It becomes the baseline. It becomes oxygen. They breathe it without thinking about it, until it stops. And when you, specifically you, the person who was part of that landscape, suddenly go quiet, the silence does not feel like absence at first. It feels like an insult to her sense of herself. Her ego starts talking before her emotions even catch up. Why hasn't he called? Does he not want me anymore? Did I not matter to him? At first, she will brush it off. She will convince herself it is not worth her attention. She will tell her friends it is fine, laugh it away, maybe post something online that signals how well she is doing without you. But underneath all of that performance, something is already eating at her. Because the ego hates being ignored more than the heart hates being hurt. She can handle a loud, clear rejection. That gives her something to process, something to respond to, something to feel righteous about. But silence gives her nothing. Silence leaves the question open. And open questions are where the mind cannot find rest. This is the first shift your silence creates. She is no longer sitting comfortably on the receiving end of attention. She is in the unfamiliar position of wondering, of not knowing, of being the one who is waiting for a signal that isn't coming. That discomfort is real. And it is the beginning of something much larger. The second stage is where most men fail completely. And understanding this stage is critical because it is the moment where everything either holds or collapses. Once she realizes you haven't broken the silence, once it becomes clear that you are not going to cave and reach out, something in her thinking shifts. It stops being about ego and starts being a test. Whether she is fully aware of it or not, she is now watching you, waiting to see how long you can actually hold. Thinking, if I just wait this out, he will be the one who comes crawling back. He will crack. He always does. So she plays her moves. She delays her replies. She goes quiet on your content. She posts things she knows are visible to you. A night out, a new look, maybe even a photo with someone else nearby. None of this is random. Every single piece of it is a signal designed to provoke a reaction, to see if you will lose your composure. To answer the question she is really asking beneath all of it, which is he actually strong or was he just pretending to be? Most men fail this test immediately. They see what she posted, they feel the panic rise, and they do the one thing that hands her everything. They send the message, the long emotional explanation, the overreaction that reveals clearly and completely that they were never actually silent. They were just waiting for her to notice, and the moment she resisted, they folded, and she sees it. She feels the relief of knowing she still has the power. And whatever quiet respect your silence was beginning to build dissolves instantly. Because silence that breaks under pressure was never really silence. It was just a delay before the desperation showed itself. But here is what happens when you hold. When you stay steady through her tests, without reacting, without chasing, without sending the message, your emotions are screaming at you to send. Her tests start to backfire. The more she tries to provoke a reaction and doesn't get one, the more unsettled she becomes. She starts asking a genuinely different question now. Why isn't this working on him? Every other man would have reacted by now. What does he know that they don't? And that question, that specific shift in how she is thinking about you, is the moment the entire dynamic begins to flip. What started as her testing your strength turns into her realizing you actually have it. And that realization is the foundation everything else gets built on. The third stage is where the psychology becomes genuinely fascinating, because here is something most people never fully understand about how the human mind works in the absence of information. The brain hates a vacuum. When there is no new input, when there is no content coming through, the mind does not rest. It fills the space with imagination. And imagination is always more vivid, more intense, more emotionally charged than reality. At first, her curiosity is simple. What is he doing? Why hasn't he reached out? That is manageable. That is just a question. But the longer your silence continues, the more that question expands. Is he with someone else? Has he genuinely moved on? Did I matter to him at all? The more questions she generates without answers, the more restless she becomes. And restlessness is not neutral. It is the engine of obsession. She is lying in bed at night. She is scrolling through her phone. There is no message from you. No notification. No signal that you exist in the same world she does. And her mind will not quiet down. She starts replaying things. Something you said weeks ago. The way you looked at her once. A joke you had between you. A place you went together. The memories come back, and they come back softened by absence. The things that seemed ordinary when you were present seem significant now. The things that were slightly annoying seem endearing now. Absence has a way of editing memory, of removing the rough edges and leaving only the warmth. And she is running that edited version of you on repeat without choosing to, without being able to stop. Here's the thing about this stage that most men never understand. Women do not miss men exactly. They miss how men made them feel. And your silence forces her to go back to those feelings, to revisit them, to sit with them in the quiet you created. And because you are not there to replace those memories with new ordinary interactions, those feelings grow larger in the absence. Your silence makes you more significant in her imagination than your presence ever made you in reality. You become the version of yourself that she cannot stop thinking about. Not because you did something dramatic, but because you stopped doing anything at all. The fourth stage builds directly on this, because as the memories replay, as the curiosity builds towards something that begins to feel like obsession, she starts noticing something else. She starts comparing, not deliberately, not consciously, but automatically, because you are now the contrast in her environment. Every man who reaches out, every message she receives from someone chasing her attention, every person who reacts to her posts within minutes, every one of those interactions unconsciously reminds her of you. The one who isn't doing any of that. The one who is not competing. The one who is not there. And in that comparison, your value rises without you lifting a finger. Humans do not notice what is normal. They notice what is different. And in a world where most men are falling over themselves for her attention, your silence becomes the loudest thing in the room. You are not part of the crowd anymore. You are the exception. And exceptions create a specific kind of fascination that ordinary attention never produces. She starts asking questions about you that she has never asked about the men who are constantly available. Why does he not need me the way they do? What does he have that makes him so calm while everyone else is so desperate? Why is he different? And the search for answers to those questions keeps pulling her back to you in her mind, even as she tries to convince herself she has moved on. The fifth stage is where silence strikes the deepest. Because what starts as ego and curiosity eventually turns inward. Eventually, she stops asking questions about you and starts asking questions about herself. Women who are constantly surrounded by attention develop a very specific sense of their own power. They walk into rooms and men notice. They post pictures and responses flood in. They reach out and people respond immediately. That constant external validation creates a feeling of certainty about their own value, their own desirability, their own importance in any dynamic they participate in. And your silence cracks that certainty in a way that nothing else can. Because you are not just any man not paying attention to her. You are someone whose attention she once had. Someone who was in her world and then chose not to be. And that specificity is what makes it personal. Other men not chasing her is irrelevant. You not chasing her raises a question that gets under her skin. Am I not enough for him? Did I do something wrong? Has he found someone he prefers? And these questions, these specific doubts, are the ones she is not comfortable with. Because they touch the deepest fear most people carry, the fear of being replaceable, of not being enough to hold someone's interest once you actually have it. This is the stage where she often reaches out indirectly. A reply to something old, a message about something meaningless, a question she does not really need an answer to. And none of that is about what the message actually says. It is about reassurance. about needing to confirm that she still exists in your world, that she still matters to you. That the silence was circumstantial rather than intentional. And this is where you must be the most disciplined you have been throughout this entire process. Because the instinct is to respond with warmth, to reassure her, to give her what she is reaching for. And if you do that, if you rush in with validation the moment she reaches out, you undo everything. You tell her that the silence was never really about your own self-sufficiency. It was about getting her to reach out. And now that she has, the game is over and she is back in control. Hold steady. Let her sit in the uncertainty a little longer. Because the longer she carries that question without an easy answer, the more she begins to chase not attention in general, but specifically yours. Your approval, your acknowledgement, your presence. The dynamic has fully reversed. She is no longer the one you are trying to impress. You are the one whose opinion of her she has started to care about. And this brings us to the final and most important stage, the one that makes everything else worth holding through. At the end of this process, when the ego has been unsettled and the curiosity has run its course and the comparisons have been made and the self-doubt has settled in, something shifts in how she fundamentally sees you. Resistance transforms into respect, and respect is the foundation of every attraction that actually lasts. In the beginning, she might have resisted your silence. She might have doubled down, tried to trigger a reaction, told herself and her friends that she does not care. But when you did not bend, when you stayed calm and unbothered through all of it, her resistance began to collapse. Because what your silence communicated throughout this entire process was something very specific and very rare. It said, I value myself enough not to beg for your attention. I am not controlled by your responses. I am not waiting for your approval to feel whole. I do not fold under pressure. And that communication, delivered without a single word, is one that cannot be faked and cannot be doubted, because words can be questioned. Gestures can be performed, but the discipline it takes to stay genuinely quiet when every emotion in you is screaming to react that cannot be manufactured. It is either there or it isn't. And she knows when it is real. Respect does not produce shallow attraction. Shallow attraction fades as soon as something newer appears. Respect produces a fundamentally different experience of who you are. You stop being just another man trying to get her attention. You become the man she cannot easily influence. The man who does not fold. The man who moves through the world from his own center rather than from the need to be noticed and approved of. And that man, that specific rare quality of genuine self-possession, is the one she keeps thinking about. The one whose attention means something specifically because it is not guaranteed. So here's what I want you to carry forward from everything we have covered today. Silence is not about ignoring someone to cause pain. It is not a game or a manipulation tactic. It is the natural expression of a man who genuinely values himself, who does not need to chase or explain or beg or perform, who is comfortable in his own presence without requiring someone else's constant validation to feel complete. And when you operate from that place genuinely rather than strategically, the silence is not something you have to manufacture. It is simply the way you carry yourself. And the effect it creates in the people around you, including the woman you have been thinking about, is not something you have to force. It follows naturally from who you are. Because self-respect, real, genuine, unperformed self-respect, is the most compelling thing a person can communicate. And silence held with that quality underneath it says everything. If this hit something real for you today, drop a comment below. I want to know where this landed. And if you haven't subscribed yet, join us here because every week we go deeper into the psychology of attraction, relationships, and the kind of self-understanding that actually changes how you show up.